We will not be defeated. We will not withdraw.
We must either love each other or we must die.
The presidency of Lyndon Baines Johnson is today remembered for the Vietnam War, a national tragedy caused by Johnson's stubbornness and paranoia. Yet we often forget the pivotal role of his firm leadership in restoring the confidence of a shocked nation and responding to a newfound cry for racial equality with hard-fought civil rights laws. Only through recognizing both Johnson's successes and failures can we begin to understand the many faces of Lyndon Johnson.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday.
After decades of segregation, violence, and systemic racism, African Americans began to assert their equal place in American democracy. Beginning in 1954, a rising civil rights movement organized bus boycotts and sit-ins, climaxing in the March on Washington in August 1963.
Next week, I shall ask the Congress of the United States to act to the proposition that race has no place in American life or law.
But a conservative coalition led by Southern Democrats had defeated more than 200 civil rights bills in Congress. They were ardently racist and bitterly opposed to equal rights for African Americans. As one of them, Howard Smith, refused to release the bill from his committee, civil rights leaders lost faith in Kennedy's leadership.
President Kennedy has not yet given the leadership that the enormity of the problem demands. He has failed to live up to his campaign promises.
The only man who could pass Kennedy's civil rights bill was a man they did not trust, Vice President Lyndon B. Johnson. Consumed by his pursuit of power, Johnson had rigged his 1948 Senate election by illegally stuffing a ballot box with votes, before initially allying with the conservative coalition in the Senate. But there was another face to Lyndon Johnson. Growing up in poverty in Texas, he had worked as a teacher for poor Mexican-American students. As a congressman, he fought to bring electricity to his neglected district, and as the youngest Senate Majority Leader, he turned on his old allies to pass the Civil Rights Act of 1957.
I think, I find Johnson endlessly fascinating. He'd been in politics since the 1920s, and he knew everyone, right? And so here's someone who uses political leverage to great powerful effect, right?
But as Kennedy's stronger bill stalled in committee, Dr. King's dream seemed out of reach until one fateful November day in 1963.
President Kennedy died at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time.
As America mourned the death of a president, the task of restoring the nation's confidence fell to his successor.
No memorial oration or eulogy could more eloquently honor President Kennedy's memory than the earliest possible passage of the Civil Rights Bill for which he fought so long.
Assuming leadership in passing the bill, Johnson used the threat of a discharge petition to force Smith to release the bill into the House, where it passed. But in the Senate, Southerners deemed the bill immoral, obnoxious, and socialistic or communistic. Richard Russell, their leader, announced they would filibuster the bill to death.
It is one of the most dangerous pieces of legislation ever presented to the Congress. It grows out of a skillfully conducted Hate the South campaign.
Johnson needed a two-thirds vote of cloture to break the filibuster. Strategizing and working alongside civil rights leaders, he fought to convince wavering Democrats and obtain Republican votes.
We don't want this to be a Democratic bill. We want it to be an American bill, and I'll see that you get proper attention and credit.
Well, you need one vote for cloture. Hell, I can call them up.
No, I'll watch that, and I'm glad you called me.
Do you have a reliable count on your cloture?
Yeah, I think that my reliable count shows a minimum of 68 votes.
And it's going to go through?
Yes, Mr. President, 7327.
Texas has been won for Johnson. Johnson has a Johnson state. In the West, Johnson has won everything.
President Johnson.
Amazing landslide for Lyndon Baines Johnson.
Johnson was re-elected with the highest percentage of the popular vote in American history. But the South, provoked by his support for civil rights, voted Republican for the first time since Reconstruction, and the struggle there was far from over.
And I say segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever.
The Civil Rights Act had not outlawed the ballot restrictions and voter intimidation that restricted African Americans from voting in the South. During protests in Selma, Alabama for voting rights, Deacon Jimmy Lee Jackson was murdered by state troopers. Thus, on March 7, 1965, civil rights activists began marching from Selma to Montgomery. Governor Wallace ordered the march to be stopped. On the Edmund Pettus Bridge, the marchers ran into 150 state troopers who brutally attacked them.
There is no moral issue. It is wrong, deadly wrong, to deny any of your fellow Americans the right to vote in this country. But really, it's all of us who must overcome the crippling legacy of bigotry and injustice. And we shall overcome.
The President of the United States had embraced the cry of the Civil Rights Movement. Swiftly, Johnson shunted the Voting Rights Act through Congress, alongside multiple other revolutionary bills.
Historians now argue that Kennedy probably would not have been as successful, would not have passed, these three major bills.
Medicare and Medicaid, the Education Act, the Immigration Act, the Housing Act, the War on Poverty, all together, they expanded equality and opportunity for all Americans. By the end of Lyndon Johnson's presidency, racial riots had broken out in cities across the United States. More than 30,000 young men had died in Vietnam after years of his lies and deception. And Dr. Martin Luther King, followed by Robert Kennedy, were both assassinated. Public trust in government began to fall and has never recovered since. But Johnson also demonstrated the power of government to answer a nation's call for justice with strong and strategic leadership.
This was someone who used all the political leverage he had from all the years he was in Congress for good, right?
Thus, today's America, from its powerful anti-discrimination laws and its social programs that support millions, to its enduring skepticism of government power, still bears the imprint of Lyndon Johnson.